Welcome to Made for the Moment, describing the world through unique topics of interest. And now your host, Jason Dodier and Jaret Grossman.
Hey, Jaret. Well, I could tell you today, beautiful day today. If our audience is feeling a little down, low energy, unsure of what they're doing in terms of the game plan and the strategy, I can assure you there's going to be a fire lit when we have our special guest on today. Not going to share his name just yet, but informing the group that this is somebody who's got a very strong, savvy business background. He's a professional athlete, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's somebody that really is going to help us have a lively discussion and debate about what to do and how to move forward to get your life in check during COVID-19. What steps and things can you do to be innovative, stay healthy, be well, and also start thinking about things you can do post COVID-19. And I guess just to kind of kick off the episode, Jaret, and have a dynamic. I mean, one of the questions that's come up, and we've talked about it a little bit in prior episodes, is staying fit during isolation. I've stated numerous times some of the things I've been doing, trying to continue with scheduled yoga classes, looking at devices like a Peloton or a basic bicycle, something you can have in your home that you can use regularly to stay fit. And then just a mix of push-ups, pull-up bar, sit-ups, right? Anything at your disposal, using items as long as it's safe around the house to maybe perform some dips and other weighted measures, shoulder raises. There's many things you can do sitting around in the house to try to stay fit and well, but you have more of a background around that, Jaret, given what you've done and accomplished, especially things around the 28-minute workout. I guess thinking about the environment we're right now, things you're doing personally, and knowing some of the stuff that you've authored and crafted over the years, what's some of the advice? If you could write the 28-minute workout for COVID-19, for this type of environment, what would it include?
Jay, absolutely. People have to stay fit during these times. You know, it's really important not only for your immune system, but also for your mental health too, and the physical health. Obviously, you know, a major fear is going to be coming out of this increase in heart disease, obesity, all this kind of stuff. So you really need to fight this off. Obviously, like you said, home-based exercises is really going to play a key factor here. So there are so many variations of push-ups that you could do. If you could look it up, there's like literally YouTube videos out there with hundreds of variations of push-ups where you use your fingers, you adjust the grip, you put your legs on an elevated ground like a couch or a chair, for instance. So that's what I've been kind of doing a lot of the time, a lot of ab work. So sit-ups, you do some planks, stuff like that. And then, like you said, using things around the house, your apartment. Doing shoulder raises with a chair is a wonderful workout. You do air squats, for instance. You do wall sits. You put your back up against the wall and you just lower your body down and just hold it there for 20, 30 seconds, a minute even. And then you do some standing lunges, for instance. And then if you are fortunate enough to live in like an apartment building, you could run the stairs, you know, in that apartment building. That's kind of what I'm doing, or walk it, do a brisk walk up, skip steps. And, you know, if you have 10 stories or, you know, some apartment buildings, and you're in Manhattan, Jay. So, you know, some of these buildings go up 50, 60, 70 stories high. You could get quite a workout in there, and obviously running outside. So even if you don't have weights set up in your house, you don't have a really big garage or basement with all this equipment set up, you could really get a workout with everything going on. And that's sort of what I'm advising, you know, clients that I work with, for instance, to be able to do during all this, you know, but you want to try to hit all the major muscle groups. And you don't have to do hour-long workouts. You know, if we're going to get into a professional athlete shortly, as you mentioned, who is doing rigorous types of training, but you know, that's not the protocol for everybody. Right now, it's just making sure that, you know, you stay fit and you get your heart rate up and you keep off the extra pounds, because you're probably doing a lot more eating, and you know, a lot of people are resorting to a little bit more alcohol than they usually do during the year, during what's going on. So it's important to just, you know, watch that belly a little bit.
Yeah, you know, Jaret, and coming to that too, it's a perfect segue when you talk about watching that belly. People are obviously home more. There's maybe the thought process to binge eat a little bit, right? You're sitting around, you get hungry. A couple of things I would recommend, and just some stuff I've tried to employ over the years, especially when I've been in various competencies in my career that have involved working from home for certain amounts of time. One of the big things to kind of evade hunger, I still try to do this regularly, is to eat smaller meals. And maybe this was instilled in me when I was living in Europe, because that was a mentality there. We didn't have huge portions. It was smaller meals regularly throughout the day and different types of snacks, right? Trying to avoid snacking on high sugar content related foods, looking at things like some of my favorite snacks, right? Like mixed nuts. You've got Greek yogurt and mixed berries, apple slices and peanut butter, cottage cheese with flax seeds, celery sticks. The list goes on. And we could certainly we'll post some of those on the website that are attached to this episode. But outside of that, a couple of the other things too that can be hard to do, but really when you think about it, swapping junk food out, getting rid of processed foods, there's a lot of healthier substitute items. And now with people having the abilities, or they don't really have much of a choice. You've got to order your food and it's getting delivered. Take some time to look online, look at the options in your surrounding area and try new things. Use this as an opportunity to try some of these things that maybe don't have a lot of the artificial ingredients that you might have had before, the stuff that was just in boxes. Try to see if you can get farm fresh food delivered and things of that nature. And then the third item I would say that I want to turn it over to you, Jaret, because you've got more expertise in this area, but really a simple thing is just kind of be aware of the calories you're consuming. You don't have to be on a strict diet, but knowing what you're intaking and making sure you don't eat more than what your body actually needs is so important. And I think there are some apps out there that I've seen or I've studied and looked at. And I think you want to focus on apps and a mindset that looks at breaking bad habits and developing new ones, because there's no old ways to go back to. One of the paid apps, Jaret, that I've seen, and I know a lot of people that personally use it, is an app called Noom, Noom, which is an exceptional app that the feedbacks I have gotten is really positive. And there's other things that are free as well. You've got things like Scalebook and Plate Joy and RPath. And I was reading an article from an author that I believe she used Noom, and she was saying when you think about weight gain and weight loss and the idea around it, look at it as if you were flying from LA to New York and the pilot would only have to turn the nose of the plane mere inches at takeoff and you would land in Miami instead, right? Those are the little variances you need to look at. And having this kind of structure, you could be the most mentally disciplined person out there, but it still helps when you've got an app and you're tracking things, just like journaling and other items that we advise for people that are trying to be highly productive and efficient. So those are some of my suggestions, but what would you say? And of course, we're going to hear from a professional athlete today that's got a whole slate of things that he can and will share with us. But what are some things you would say, Jaret, based on your experiences, that might help people during these times to stay slimmer and not put on too many pounds that could be detrimental to their health?
So, Jed, you hit the nail on the head there with a lot of the foods that you mentioned. I think that people kind of need to put this in a couple of different camps, which is if you're overweight, you definitely really have to watch your weight in terms of what you're eating. Like you said, you don't have to give up foods that you enjoy and love, right? That's not the purpose. Diets don't work, especially like deprivation. It never works if you're starving yourself, because you basically lose some weight for a couple of weeks. But then if you even get to a place where you're happy, you're then most likely going to boomerang once you reintroduce all those things back into your diet. And it's very difficult to just give things up that you enjoyed cold turkey completely and never return back to them. So you kind of got to look at it from a weekly perspective of what can I give up on certain days, and maybe you introduce a couple of cheat days or cheat meals throughout the week where you get to enjoy those things that you like. But it's the constant, like you said, it's the overeating at every single meal that you sit down to. There was a guy they interviewed, Jay, who literally, I think it's a sad situation that some people face, but they had to extract the guy out of the apartment through the window because he got so heavy, right? So he basically said every meal was like Thanksgiving. I mean, you can't eat like that, right? When they asked him, how'd you get this way? So you just need to keep that into perspective, that you can't go overboard with your diet in terms of your consumption, like you said. And there are other people, Jay, that have taken this fitness extreme to a whole new level, that's not necessarily healthy, right? Where they're trying to get by on like 800 calories a day, and they're working out 3 hours a day. That you're setting yourself up for, tremendous health risks, not just in the short term, but definitely long term as well. You need to focus on nutrition. Is also very important in terms of an immunity standpoint. So if there's a virus, for instance, that you don't want to catch, and forget, not just the virus, there's plenty of other things that, you have to have a strong immune system to thwart off. And nutrition is going to play a huge role in that. So if you're under eating, you need to really watch that as well. And maybe this is a time to really get some better nutrition with home cooked meals, let go of the processed food and junk that you eat when you're kind of on the go all the time, and you're eating the bars with all that are made in a lab, essentially. And now you get to actually watch what you're cooking and so forth. So, take a full balance, kind of approach with all this stuff, and look at it from the perspective of, which camp are you on, and do you need to sort of get back to, I'm always about, with my clients, for instance, or whatnot, it's all about the equilibrium. Get back to a center of what you feel like is your true self. So those are kind of my tips, Jay. And I think, you've been living it, just being with you for so many years in undergrad and, post, it's just, it's remarkable to see your strict habits in terms of nutrition and exercise.
It becomes a lifestyle at a certain point in time, and it comes to a point where you start to have things that might adversely impact your body. You get headaches and you feel like crap, and all that stuff is true, having kind of lived that for a long time. And coming from a family, especially with my dad, who he's adverse to sugar and processed foods for many, many decades. And I could see if he were to have something like that, it would certainly be it would negatively impact his day. So it's something we take really seriously, and I think it ties into, Jaret, to an episode we're going to be doing soon on intermittent fasting. This is an ideal opportunity for folks to maybe try it out a bit at home. There's different services and things that we'll dive into later on in a subsequent episode that are going to look into this in ways to do it safely and efficiently, and introduce it into your life during certain intervals. So I think that's really good. And another area too that this episode really stood out, and I think we'll ride home to our audience, is we talk a lot about marketing, personal branding, and Steve Orosco, we're going to have on the show. He's exceptional at this. He's really exemplified what it takes to build a strong personal brand, to market and create something that he's passionate about. And I think when we look at just little nuggets that we can share and things we've experienced in our life, when you're marketing and you're branding, and it relates to all the apps we just talked about, Noom and some of the others, you can have the best product in the world, but you have to market efficiently, and you have to work your brand, and it has to relate to your target base, and you have to have goodwill and a positive image in the market, right? You don't want to do evil or be known to kind of mislead your consumers or people that might be relying on you. So a couple of tips that I would say from my experience in being involved and engaged in global marketing: always look for the innovative, unique ways to speak to your target customers once you've identified them, right? You've got to develop and execute a successful marketing plan. Is absolutely paramount. And alignment not only gets everybody on the same page, Jaret, but it's going to increase efficiency, and it's going to increase the odds of helping your business to meet or exceed your goals. And Steve certainly has done a really good job of doing that, now going on his 8th or 9th big event. We'll look at what SMASH Global has done. I think you want to look at low-hanging fruit once you've identified kind of that plan and put a structure in place. And of course, you don't want to lose money. It depends on the size of your business for sure. It impacts the level of risk you can take, but you have to pick your spots. And what I mean by that is you want to get your product and service out there fast within those critical potential customers that you've targeted. And they'll let you know kind of organically if you're onto something or not. But you've got to do your due diligence, take a lot of time doing marketing research, and then start to look start to look at what the low-hanging fruit is and try to break through the clutter. There's a lot of clutter out there. And I know in a minute, Jaret, I want you to talk a little bit about a broad overview of marketing as it relates to the digital age, as it relates to kind of social media. But my message is you've got to break through that clutter. Many successful marketers that I've seen, and I've had the chance to be mentored and work with a lot of CMOs of small, mid-sized companies and Fortune 500 businesses. And even through doing my MBA, we got to see these folks come in and kind of give us live case studies. And these successful marketers really embrace what we call people-based marketing practices to ensure that they're giving it's a tailored, personally relevant message with content that's offering at each stage of the customer journey. You've got to understand what that customer journey looks like and the ultimate value proposition. So that's just some kind of high nuggets, and Steve's going to go a little bit deeper. But I guess, Jaret, you can't ignore social media. So let's talk about this for a minute. It's where all the so-called magic, right? The magic is happening in social, and Steve's got an expertise there, as we'll see when he talks about what he's doing with Instagram, Facebook, and other things. But when you look at some of the businesses that have been built solely on the backs of social media, sure, it's intimidating at first, even for me and folks in our generation, right? Even when you look at Instagram and some of the newer fads that are out there, it's I got laughed at the other day because I wanted to access and upload pictures on Instagram using my laptop, and it made me start to feel a little old. But I think as you start to build momentum, and you'll see that posting on social and doing these things gets easier and easier over time. What's your messaging around the digital age? You've been successful there. How do people, from your perspective, increase brand presence in marketing and leverage social media to be successful using some of the tips and nuggets that I've kind of laid out?
Yeah, Jay, thanks so much for sharing, some of your insights in terms of the brick and mortar. You're in a huge corporation, with Schneider Electric and now Alpha Struxure. So to be able to market in today's society at that big level, that's just, a tremendous amount of insight for people to be able to glean off of. In terms of the digital age, we have to face the reality. There's a monopoly in terms of search, and there's a monopoly in terms of social media. And, Google and Facebook, which owns Instagram, basically have monopolies on a large percentage of the information that's out there on the internet. Now, I wouldn't, I'm an idealist, and I wouldn't like to see that happen. I'm more of a capitalist at heart, and I believe that there should be fair competition. And when a company gets too big, I believe in antitrust laws and all kinds of stuff, break it up, and allow, smaller fish to be able to compete and grow. But this is the reality that we live in, and without congressional kind of reform, this is the way that it's going to be for a little while. So, Google, like I said, and you could throw Twitter in there as well, which also has a pretty big stakehold on that percent of information. But you could call it a duopoly on social and Google, in terms of search, and then they obviously own YouTube. So that's another huge percentage of the content of information. And then you can look at all the acquisitions that they've done. So the long and the short of it is you have to be well known on these brands. That's just the way that it is. So we could take it from the social media aspect. Facebook has so much data on every individual. Just look at what happened with the privacy concerns and all that stuff with Cambridge Analytica. They have so much data on individuals that, of course, you could use it to your advantage too. If you're a business, you can advertise and you could dial in those demographics, for instance, that if they like certain interests that are sort of groupings or similar to the interests that you target, now that's at your disposal, so to speak, to get in front of them. So you could pick age range, you could even pick, net worth, you could pick interests, you could pick other pages that they liked or businesses that they liked, and you could really dial down the demographics specifically. In terms of a following, like you mentioned, there's a lot of individuals and companies who are influencers, for instance, and they just build big followings, but they don't really have the big product structure or backbone to the business to really profit off it. So if you think that you're going to profit off of just having a bunch of followers, you're setting yourself up for failure there in a way, and a lot of people are. So that's not really necessarily. There are people who make money, but don't have the rose-colored glasses on, that you're just going to get a big social media following, so to speak, and all of a sudden the money's going to start pouring in. It's just a means to be able to get in front of more people with, a great product or service, but it's not the be-all, end-all, so to speak. But it is important in today's time to have a nice following that you have access to be able to promote yourself and your business. So, definitely Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, those are the big ones. LinkedIn, obviously, you could do a lot of networking and stuff there. Now, in terms of Google, let's talk about this other, end of the spectrum, which was the biggest thing since social media came out. And now they took, Facebook and whatnot took a big market share away from Google, but they're still, tremendously dominant. And they're coming out with all kinds of stuff that's basically taking over Microsoft Word, for instance. People are using Google Docs now. They're taking over Excel. People are using Google Sheets, and they've been working on this system a while where it's free to use. And then now they're going to start charging for it essentially when you run out of data. And storage and all that stuff. And there's some rumblings about the data that they're using that they're going to be able to profit off of that. But this is the system that we live in. But anyway, you want to be known if you have a business on these social sites. But not only that, on Google, when people search, because if people have an acute pain, you're a dentist, you're a therapist, you're a psychologist, people are going to type that in. Where are they going to type it in? Typically Google. And if you come up first, they're probably going to give you a call. They'll go to your website, they'll opt in, they'll do some kind of call to action that you have. And, we build all kinds of intricate funnels at JARBLY and whatnot to, help you convert off of people who stumble across your website, for instance. And obviously we do a lot in terms of the marketing. But in terms of the Google search, there's really, nobody really knows their algorithm unless you work for them or have worked for them in the past, kind of thing. And it's constantly changing. But the long and the short of it is that they really have an algorithm that's dialed in on how well known your website domain URL is now, and how relevant it is to the term that was typed in. Now, they basically have a complex way of going about this. But, to enlighten you a little bit, it's basically they're ranking every single site. So a fresh site that was just created, you bought the domain name from GoDaddy, for instance, Google is basically recognizing that it's not very well known, as opposed to another site that's highly trafficked and has something called link backlinks, where hundreds, thousands, millions of other sites say, hey, check out Jason's therapist website. Now Google is going to say, thumbs up to Jason's therapist website. We're going to bump this up. And then if it's related around keywords, specific keywords, so you do what's called backlinking around these keywords. Now Google looks at this more favorably when somebody types in that specific keyword about your business, for instance, and especially if it's specific to a locale, because you could do local marketing, you could do nationwide marketing. And so the more relevant your website is to that search term, and the more backlinks that you have on something called high page ranking sites. See, Google, again, is they're ranking every single site basically between their scale of 1 to 10. And so the higher your page rank is, so to speak, the more Google is going to look at you favorably compared to another website that is basically a lower page rank, has less backlinks, or those backlinks aren't as high quality. And high quality meaning, what are the page ranks of the sites that are linking back to you? So we do all these kinds of methods, at JARBLY, in terms of on-site SEO. That means fixing up the actual text and the layout and the menu structures and site mapping and all that kind of stuff on your actual site. And then the off-site SEO, which is mainly, again, making these backlinks and press release distributions and all that kind of stuff to get you well known. But that's kind of the long and the short in it, Jay. So, this is the digital age that people really need to get awake to, because the days of people hunting in their car, are over for a service, unless you're just, driving around to look for something to eat. And even then, they're looking on, a lot of the apps that are out there. So these are definitely some tips. But, Jay, I kind of want to transition into, how do you think these old school companies with huge capital, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but how do they remain relevant with this digital age and all these newcomers who are really tech savvy and whatnot? And when you look at Hollywood, for instance, I mean, they have tremendous competition when they're putting out a movie in the box office, when it comes to Netflix, when it comes to Hulu, and even YouTube has really, really high quality shows. And then you got Amazon Prime or whatnot. So there's so much attention that's being diverted away with this digital age, that now we sort of have to juxtapose these two ideas of how do the old school companies sort of maintain their footing and transition into the digital age? What are you kind of seeing, and what kind of tips can you recommend in terms of remaining relevant?
Look, Jaret, it's very clear. Disruption's here. It's here to stay. It's paved the way for a lot of opportunity for businesses, and also for existing brick and mortar and other methodologies to kind of reinvent themselves. One quote I would say that rings true, and I think is very prevalent for the times, goes like this: the most beautiful things in life are not things. They're people and places, memories and pictures. They're feelings and moments and smiles and laughter. And when I hear that, and you bring up cinema, movies, I think about 1997, being with a bunch of my friends, going to see James Cameron's Titanic, right? The epic, action-packed film with, Leo DiCaprio. It was just incredible. And but I remember the way I felt, who I was with. I could see it in my mind. And going to cinemas over the years, I've had such remarkable, I remember Wedding Crashers and laughing with friends. I mean, the list goes on. And I think when you look at, let's keep cinemas front and center for a second. I believe people crave experiences. You've got the big screen, right? There's something to be said about watching it in truly that fashion. Yes, some homes have the good capability of having this incredible sound system and an AV system, big screen, all the stuff, the works. But the majority of folks don't have that. And I think first and foremost, it's just the atmosphere. Think about it: going to watch Star Wars in the cinema versus on your tablet or on your phone. It's just not the same experience. So that's the first thing I would say, is that when I think about cinema and movies, you've got that which is going to be very, very hard to replicate. And that's number one. In a lot of cities, by the way, Jaret, before New York, I lived in Arlington, Virginia. They would do these outings in the evenings in the summertime, where they would set up big screens in the middle of the city in a park area, and everybody kind of gathered around for the experience. And it was incredible. I mean, it wasn't going to the cinema, but it just shows the value of actually getting out and being with other people. And that also speaks volumes, Jaret, to the whole point of when you're in the cinema, right? The experiences you share with others. Think about it. If it's a horror movie, it's a comedy, you feed off of each other. And that's really special as well. It's really a nice thing to do. It's something different. And it's a place where you can kind of shut off. Today, if you're as guilty as I am, I'll be sitting home watching a series, but I'm constantly checking my phone, or if an ad comes up, right? Because a lot of these things, they make money off of ads. An ad comes up, well, you go on and you play Words with Friends or something. You lose your focus. And I think being home, being in a cinema, you're going to be focused. You're going to have that advantage of just kind of being there. Your phone is off and you're paying attention. You're immersed in this environment. Plus, one of the things I love about going to the cinema, I don't know about you, Jaret, is the previews. I love going there and the fact that you can see all of the different things that are coming out. And I know this has become more prevalent in some of the different platforms, but I still think you get that unique experience and exposure. You're not disrupted. You come in, you can have a date night. You can go out with friends, right? You get out of the house. You can buy snacks that you like. Sure, they're inflated a little bit in price, but you're not doing this all the time, right? So it gives you that alone time. And so I think, Jaret, for all of those things, they're going to have to continuously find ways to innovate. I remember even in Georgetown or DC, I mean, we had these cinemas that were like the most comfortable chairs. They reclined. They brought food right to you, right? They have services. So the cinemas will continue to reinvent themselves and innovate over time, Jaret. But I just believe with all my heart that this is something that is going to continue. It will withstand the test of time. I just can't tell you what it's going to look like in the next 3 to 4 years because it is starting to change. It changed so rapidly. And I think just kind of coming full circle on this before we open the floor up and bring Steve Orosco on in a minute is let's branch out a bit beyond cinema. Let's look at the ecosystem that plays into this. Let's look at Hollywood, sports and entertainment, post COVID-19, right? This is really, I can't remember. And I pray we never see this again, a time where there's no sporting events. Now, Steve's going to talk a bit about some of the things that like UFC and MMA have tried to do to kind of innovate and profit during these very uncertain times where there is no content around sporting. But what are you thinking in terms of how is this going to move forward? First of all, do you have some projections potentially when you foresee sports coming back on? I've heard rumblings that you might see baseball and golf returning maybe as early as June. They've talked about potentially starting up the NBA, although I have no idea what that would look like and how it would happen with the fan base not being there, because some of the statistics, Jaret, that are out there are showing major percentages of people saying they don't want to be exposed. Even if there is social distancing, it's still a very, very small percentage. So what are you seeing? Give your predictions on some of the timeframes and the future of sports, entertainment, in Hollywood post-COVID-19.
Jay, yeah, I mean, we're in unprecedented chartered waters, like you said. I mean, I don't know what that future is going to hold, and whether it's going to be all this thing, everything is shut down until there's a vaccine or until there's some miracle cure, whatever it is. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't think that's really sustainable. People do have fears in terms of large gatherings, and I don't see it happening going from a national shutdown to all of a sudden the NFL season going to start and there's going to be 70,000, fans sitting, huddled next to each other in a stadium. I don't think that's going to happen at all. So I think you're going to see a lot of these sporting events with no fans. But I mean, golf, like you said, I mean, you could practice social distancing playing golf. I mean, it's a non-contact sport. The golfers can easily stand 6 feet away from each other, but you got the crews, you got the television crews, you got the media. So it's a lot more complex than that. But it's not the same, even if you're watching on television and there's no crowd there, right? I mean, it takes the whole concept of the sport, the whole element of the lore out of it. So I don't know what they're going to do. I know that people are chomping at the bit to get out of their house. People are going stir crazy. I mean, in my parents, community down here, people are walking on the golf course. Golf is shut down for it, but they don't know what to do, right? They're not even walking on the sidewalk. They're walking on the golf course. So, I mean, people are chomping at a bit. You alluded to it in terms of people like going out to the cinema. People just like going out and doing things. And that's never going to be replaced by technology. It doesn't matter how good that technology gets. It's just, you can't replace that human-to-human interaction or watching something live like a sporting event. So people are going to be, they're in this mode where they're very fearful right now. But this going on for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, people are going to start, being up in arms a little bit. And, they're going to have to cave. They're going to have to cave in, even if it's before a vaccine is instituted or whatever. So I'd say we get back to action sooner rather than later with a lot of things. But the big, 50,000 crowds, I think that's going to be over for this year. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement, Jaret, and I'm real excited now to get a perspective of somebody who lives it, somebody who's been relentless. He's refused to cave in over the years, and he's made a big time name for himself, especially around the sport of MMA, which is truly, it's been eye-opening and exciting to learn more. He's somebody I hold in high esteem, what he's been able to do and nurture and grow. And I would say, let's buckle up. Let's get ready to step into the octagon behind the cage with the one and only Steve Orosco from SMASH Global.
Thanks for tuning in to Made for the Moment, with conversations and unique guests surrounding business, news, politics, wellness, and entertainment. And now a word from our special guest.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another great episode. Today, we're going to really hone in on what it takes to stay structured, motivated, and resilient for life in general, but also we're trying to give COVID-19 a roundhouse kick. And to do that, we're joined in the studio today by a really unique guest, somebody that's not only a fellow New Englander, but has a strong wrestling background like my colleague, Jaret Grossman here, Steve Orosco. And just quick background on Steve, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Steve is a former Wall Street broker, professional MMA fighter, and the founder of SMASH Global, which we're excited to learn a little bit more about and share, because MMA, as many of you may know, is a very fast-growing sport. And he's been very dynamic in bringing together marketing, entrepreneurship, innovation, business savvy to kind of take it to the world at large and really bring to people something really special. And that's been actually a spectacle for those who've been able to see some of the great work that he's been doing. So with that, I want to say, Steve, first of all, thank you for being here on the West Coast today with us. You've had a very vast career trajectory so far, going from corporate America, having these kind of experiences. What are you using, first of all, today? Maybe tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you're doing to kind of, just in general, withstand this coronavirus pandemic, staying positive, motivating others. We'd love to get some of that guidance from you to kind of kick off our show, given these unprecedented times we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I think it's always good to start to talk about this isolation and quarantine, because it's very difficult. I'm actually a very introverted person. Most people don't know that. I'm a homebody, but I'm able to kind of turn on that switch when I leave to do the things that I love, like going to the gym, like being in the entertainment space and doing MMA. But right now it's actually getting very difficult. I'm ready to get the hell out of this house. I want to do another show. I want to get to the gym. And it is very difficult. So when all this started happening, I actually felt very demotivated. I felt very, I don't like to be on pause mode. Helpless, let's say helpless. Because sports and entertainment literally just is dead. There's nothing you can do. The Athletic Commission obviously had to ban all events until California lifts them. So I'm kind of sitting here in New England with not much to do. So about a week ago, I said, what can I do to add value to my brand with the resources that I have and stay relevant in sports and entertainment? So I said, let me start doing like what you're doing, IG Lives with people that are influential that I know. So on Monday, I started with A-Rod, which was really good conversation. And then, and I'm a diehard Red Sox fan, FYI.
I was just going to say that. That's two of us.
And then yesterday, I did Mike O'Hearn, who's probably like the biggest fitness legend of all. Next week, I'm going to do like Shane Mosley and I think Chuck Liddell. So just a way to keep creating content, give me something to put on my social media, because it's really hard to put stuff out when you're in a place, again, small town USA, compared to when I'm in LA. There's so much content, so many resources, and so many people that I can use. And now I'm just like, what do I do? So that's what I'm focused on right now while we're doing this.
Yeah, and Steve, on that note too. So Mike O'Hearn obviously is a legend, 4-time Mr. Universe. He's a titan, gladiator of our times. Between yourself, what you've been doing, and feedback from him and other legends, we'll talk about some of these people you've honored through SMASH Global over the years. What's some of the advice you give as a health and wellness perspective to people being stuck indoors that have to completely restructure their schedule and how they stay fit, and maybe are going crazy because they can't pump the level of iron that they might be used to? How do you respond to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I mentioned to you before, that's been very difficult because I'm a very train 100 miles an hour. I feel like I train harder than anyone on the planet, and having to now do it in my home is very difficult because I don't have the equipment that I need. Yeah, I have like a couple little dumbbells and some resistance bands, and I have a TRX, but I can't get my heart rate up to a level that I want to. And unfortunately, I tore my ACL 6 weeks ago. So I can't go out and run. I can't do sprints. I can't do things outside that I could make up for that. So when I talked to Mike about it, he said, this is a good time for you and other people who train really hard to not go 100% and dial it down to 50%. And he used his wife, Mona, as an example. His wife, Mona, they train, at 4 a.m. every day. She's in such crazy shape. And they just had their first child. So, and she's 45, he's 51. And he said, this is what I did with her. We dialed it down. She only worked out 3 days a week. She went from 100% to 60% during her pregnancy. So people should treat their quarantine like it's their third trimester, like they're pregnant. Just dial it down. And then once you have the baby or quarantine is over, back to 100%.
I think that's very prescient advice for our listeners, because I know a lot of people are going, even some of the feedback we've got, they're going stir crazy and they're trying to get guidance from us and, from Jaret's experience on what they can do. Sticking with staying positive and inspiration. So some of the folks through SMASH, and we'll get more into SMASH Global as we progress throughout the show, but looking at, some of the Hollywood action heroes, icons you've had, everyone runs the gamut from Mel Gibson, Lou Ferrigno, Dolph Lundgren. You mentioned Shane Mosley. What would be some of the inspiration and wisdom that you've got from obviously from your experience and from them personally that you could share with some of the audience members, one, to get through this tough time that we're in right now, but also just for life in general? I think that would be very, very encouraging to kind of hear, given some of the gloomy circumstances we're facing.
The awesome thing about these celebrities, for example, is people don't realize what they've gone through to get where they are now. Because everyone just pops on social media or sees them in a movie, like, oh my God, they're just stars and they're this and that from the get-go. But they're not realizing that they had to struggle for 20, 30, 40 years to get to where they are and to get that clout. So it's important for people to really stay positive and motivated and know that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And I've been listening to a bunch of influencers on here during this quarantine. They're like, hey, this is the time to build content and to attack. And I don't think this is a good time to attack. But I think this is a really good time to learn and really add pieces to your arsenal so you can come out of this quarantine with maybe new tools, a new level of motivation or a new mindset. I think people are feeling very pressured right now that they have to go even harder than they did before to create something. And I think that's actually a bad idea. Because again, everything takes a lot of time.
No, you're absolutely right. Steve, thanks for so much insight that you're providing us here in terms of working out, training, and definitely people need to be using this time to heal their bodies. Like you said, you tore an ACL or whatnot. I mean, a lot of people have these nagging injuries from weightlifting that, they just don't want to mentally shut it off or shut it down. But sometimes you just got to actually do it. You need to give yourself a needed, several months break in order to heal those ligaments, those tendons, those joints that just get pounded by the weight training or running that you're doing. So, it could be a blessing in disguise in a way when you look at it like that, definitely a silver lining. But, you mentioned these whole high profile actors and these athletes that come to your events. A lot of people are interested in the methods that you use to sort of attract these people to come to your events. How did that sort of start, those relationships? You mentioned some pretty, legendary names here that you've had. What was the process to be able to sort of, get that high profile status base to be involved in your company?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about MMA is everybody loves it. And everybody loves fighting. I don't care who you are. But the problem with MMA is, and I always say this, no disrespect to any fans or anybody out there, but MMA came from a very, very NASCAR crowd. It is what it is, a $25 ticket crowd. Everyone who goes to these local shows are friends and family of the fighter. Whereas boxing has centuries of history and buildup. It started with people who had money in the first place. So there's so much more class and sophistication. That's why you see people with suits and their wives and gowns going to major boxing fights. But when it comes to MMA, you don't see that. You see tap out t-shirts and Bud Lights. So I wanted to create a platform using the sport that I love to get those people to come. And I think a lot of that came from my corporate background. I kind of went backwards. I came from that Wall Street backgrounds, the black tie charity galas, every other quarter. So I understood the power of networking because of those. And I said, I need to get that crowd to come watch MMA. And also that will attract the celebrities, because in all honesty, celebrities, people don't realize this, but I'm going to use Sylvester Stallone as an example. If he wants to go to watch the UFC, for him to get from his car to his seat, he has to go through tunnels and back doors and securities. Every fighter wants to take a picture with him. Every manager, every fighter's girlfriend, every staff. By the time he gets to his seat, he's already dejected, and then he's getting bombarded while he's there, people asking pictures. And then he has to cut out early to avoid the masses. So it ends up being an inconvenience, even though they love fighting so much. So creating a platform where I max out at 250 to 300 people, like a large wedding, a higher ticket price point. So if I'm charging $500 a ticket, you're getting a $500 crowd, much more respectful crowd. So because of that, these guys have loved coming. They love what I'm doing for the sport. I'm elevating it, kind of bringing that Formula One, demographic. And I think they really appreciate it. So this wasn't my idea. I always give other people credit when it's deserved. After my second show, I brought this woman on named Jackie Callan. They call her the Queen of Boxing. Meg Ryan played her part in a movie called Against the Ropes. So she was the manager for Tommy Hearns and James Toney. So she was doing boxing when women weren't even allowed in the sport of boxing per se. And she wanted to get into the sport of MMA and promote, etc. And her same perception, MMA crowd is horrible. So she came, I hired her. She said, you should bring your show to Los Angeles. My first 2 shows were in San Diego. And the one thing she told me to change about my platform was I should honor a celebrity every time I have an event. Because in LA, that's what brings in more people. That's your selling point. So for about 3 or 4 months, I spent a lot of time with her in LA. She introduced me to a lot of people. So I ended up honoring Freddie Roach as my first, who she was really close with. I ended up becoming friends with him as well. And because I honored him, then it was, Frank Stallone comes and Tommy Hearns was my host, and this celebrity and that celebrity. And I was like, holy shit. So this does work. So really had to build the platform around celebrities who love the sport and they love martial arts.
And Steve, so that brings to the next point, right? If you look at, by the way, if you've had a chance, you've seen Jaret. He's been known as to be a doppelganger of Sly Stallone. So he's gotten stopped. He feels a little bit of Sylvester's, the pain he goes through when he gets stopped going places. Yeah. But on another note, right? I mean, you've been very bold, right? And one of our favorite quotes here, the future has many names, right? For the weak, it's unattainable. For the fearful, it's unknown. And for the bold, it's ideal. And you've continually made bold moves. I remember I was following this closely in 2017 when Meryl Streep was on the Golden Globes, and her direct quote, I believe, was, Hollywood is crawling with outsiders and foreigners, and if we kick them all out, you'll have nothing to watch but football and mixed martial arts, which are not the arts. And your response to this, I thought, was genial, and it generated a lot of positive press around the sport. So, one, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the thought process behind that, but what do you keep? And this is so evident today. No, it doesn't matter where you are, any vertical in society. How do you stay bold, stay innovative, stay hungry, and stay steps ahead of potential competitors for your target audience? I think this is a very valuable lesson for those listening.
Man, it's so funny because it's always such a cliche thing to say, but man, passion is everything. You hear all the top influencers say that. So I don't like to piggyback and say that all the time, but it's just true. Like, I genuinely love martial arts so much. I love wrestling. I love fighting. I don't even love to fight. I just love to compete, so I really want to make my sport as elevated as possible. The UFC already controls it. There's never going to be a competitor for the UFC, but there can be niches. And, I think I am the only one who's doing what I do. I came up with the first concepts, and I'm just trying to keep that steam engine rolling. I've done 9 shows, have a 10th one coming up probably in a few months. And I always say Dana White is lucky that I don't have the Fertitta brothers backing me, because if I did, he would be in trouble. Because again, like, I love what I do, and all this. One thing that people are very, enamored by is I've never paid a celebrity to come to my show. I've never paid a celebrity to accept an award. They willingly want to be a part of what I'm doing, and I think that's a good testament to the level of what I produced.
Oh, absolutely.
And also too, just to interject quick, Jaret, one of the things I've seen a lot of the pictures, you've got on a side note, talk about being bold and living bold. You've got a SMASH Hummer. Can you just on the vehicle, because I've seen some awesome pictures of it, and just can you tell us a little bit quickly about the car and the origin and what you're riding now?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story, because we're all materialistic in different ways, right? Whether it's you love shoes, your thing, or cars, maybe you want a big house, whatever it is. And for me, when I first moved to LA, I was like, holy shit. Like, in LA, $100,000 car is like a Honda in New England. And if I'm going after this demographic, I also need to portray I had to portray myself in a certain way. I got to be at the same levels as all the people that are coming to my shows. And that's just being honest. And so I went to this place called CNC Motors in Ontario, California, and to look at all their cars. They had everything, from the Lamborghinis and Ferraris and this and that. And I go there to go look at all those cars. And in the corner, I see this Hummer. And it's black and red. And I'm like, oh, holy shit. I've never really even seen one in person. And I saw that, and I remember when I was watching that movie, Gone in 60 Seconds, that was my favorite car in the whole movie. And it was a 2-door pickup. I remember them going down the ramp, and they had a bullet restrictor and under the seat. And I always said, I'm going to have one of those one day. And I saw that, and I was like, holy shit, I'm bringing that home today. And I did. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't expect the amount of branding it would also attract. Like, people always know, oh, that's the SMASH Hummer. Like, I can go anywhere in LA and people know that truck, because it's number one, it's iconic of a vehicle, and it's just so massive. You're like, you got to be kind of ballsy to drive an H1 every single day as your daily driver. And it's a pickup, so they only made like 300 2-doors, so you never see a 2-door. Yeah. And it just became a great branding vehicle in a place where cars are everything in Los Angeles. And it's very hard to stick out. It was a great way to stick out. That is for sure.
That's awesome.
And
and again, I don't mean to interject as well, but I'm very big on obviously branding. And a car is literally the best way to brand yourself. I don't care what anybody says. And I'm going to use a Lamborghini as an example. You could go lease a Lamborghini for like $2,500 a month, let's say. People, wow, so much money. That's crazy. And yeah, it is a lot of money to spend. I mean, that's what rent costs. But you can make so much money off having that car, because number one, you're going to go to Cars and Coffee every weekend. You're going to be a part of the Lamborghini clubs of guys who go driving all the time. It's literally the best way you could possibly network with a very elite demographic for the cost of $2,500 a month. So if you look at it from a business standpoint, it's second to none. There's nothing that can supersede that.
And it beats hours upon hours of having to hit a golf ball to try to network.
Yes, it does. It's like,
I'm in, man.
It's a lot easier to drive than to play golf.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to drive straight.
It's the truth. Even on social media, you'll see these guys they'll have a Lamborghini and they're going on their private jets, and that's what they post. And they get all these followers because of it, because that's what people aspire to have. Obviously, they want it overnight. It doesn't work like that. But, for $2,500 a month, you can too have a Lamborghini and be a part of a club. Nobody knows where you live. No one knows your bank account. They just see a Lamborghini.
Yeah, absolutely. So, piggybacking off of these marketing tactics, Steve, obviously you're a marketer, I mean, you've done a tremendous job in terms of cultivating a brand presence. And, you mentioned that you keep it kind of tight knit and small, 200, 300 a crowd, but that's a large crowd for most businesses, to be able to attract, and especially at a high ticket price point. So, what kind of hype do you do before an event? What kind of marketing do you do besides what you're throwing out there already? And, what do you do to sort of like checklist through to make sure that the event is going to be stellar? Do you sort of go through a list and make sure that every event sort of matches up similar to the one before, and you try to, exceed those expectations?
Yes, always try to exceed. And again, I'm in entertainment, so entertainment is a very intangible product, because you also have to realize, let's say my fourth show, let's say from a number standpoint, I lost 20 grand, but I honored Mel Gibson and I honored Mickey Rourke that night. And now they're attached to my brand for the rest of my life. As far as promotional videos, their value supersedes that 20 grand. So that has a value. So it's really important that you get all the little branding elements attached to you as fast as you can, because you can use all that in the future.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So golden nuggets here. And then obviously you mentioned earlier, you came from a Wall Street background. So how did that sort of help you in terms of just understanding maybe the clientele that you're talking about, attracting more of a Formula One base as opposed to the typical UFC crowd?
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about that transition. What caused that kind of change of heart? And how does it lend itself in terms of your experience?
For me, I'm a very experiential guy. So even when I go to a basketball game or a football game, I personally, not to sound like bougie or anything, but I personally rather be in a suite or a box with 10 or 15 other people networking and enjoying the socialization while I'm watching the game, as opposed to sitting in your seat. You can only talk to the left or the right of you. It takes an hour to go to the bathroom. You can't really go get food. The experience isn't the same. I prefer the social element attached to it. So I wanted to create the same thing, just on a little bit of a larger scale. Because again, networking is everything. And I tell people, they're like, "Oh, Steve, $500 for a ticket? Man, that's a lot of money." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you're getting dinner, you're meeting celebrities, you're watching pro fights. And guess what? If you come to my show and you don't network and you don't get your $500 back that night on referrals or business cards or contacts, then you didn't do your job that night. That's not my fault." You really have to use your time wisely. And it's no different, like being in New York City. Like there's so many galas and so many opportunities. If I go, now I'm in New York and I see that there's an event, it's like $2,500 to go. I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. But man, everyone else in that room also paid $2,500. So that means they're all viable candidates for whatever business that I'm trying to attract. And for me, going after the wealthier demographic, I want to be in those rooms. So you have to pay to play. Be no different than, I don't know, I was invited to, like, say, an Obama thing, and it was like $5 grand. I'm like, oh, $5 grand. But everyone else in that room is paying $5 grand. So you go that room, you work that room, you pick a couple people to really latch onto and form a relationship with, and then you're good. You're going to get your money back if you use it properly. The problem with people today is, excuse my language, they're business card whores, man. Like you can't just go to these events and just talk to everyone. You got to go through and you pick a couple people that you really attach to, and that's all you do. Like one card per night, because you can only have so many lunches and dinners with so many people and build a strong relationship, because it's like a marriage.
Plus, you build up a lot of saturated fats and potential issues going out to eat all the time.
That is true too.
And you're networking with like-minded folks that typically have a lot of similar characteristic and traits, and they're going to think like you, act like you. And you're right, because I know a lot of folks, they network like crazy, and it's just about stacking those cards that get lost anyway. And if you can build meaningful relationships, that's going to take you for the long term to build that close grip,
without a doubt. I'll give a great example. A-Rod had invited me and Janine out, my wife, to a dinner. This was like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, before all this. And I go in this room. It's at Del Frisco's, over, was it America's Cup or whatever. And I walk in this room. There's it's like a round table of 10, right? So there's 10 guys that are sitting at this table, and I'm talking like this the owner of the Rays, the president of American Express, Mitchell Models of Model Sporting Goods, the owner of the Panthers and A-Rod, and super powerful people. I'm sitting at this table, I'm like, holy shit. And Alex's partner, Keith, says, hey, I know everyone in this room pretty much knows each other, but everyone give a 30-second in case you don't, right? So go around this table. As you go around this table, I already have it in my head. Okay, I can't connect with all 10 of these guys in one night. There's not enough time. So let me pick out the one guy in this whole table of this 30 seconds, say, no, I'm going to relate to. So we went around the table and we got to this guy, Bruce Mosler, who was a chairman of Cushman and Wakefield. And I'm not even a real estate guy, but he had said a few things. I was like, oh, that is my guy. I would love to spend time with him. So right when we did our thing, we had appetizers, we ate. Once people started standing up, I beeline straight for him. And I literally spent most of the dinner just talking with him. And since then, I've had like 6 dinners with him. He's donated to my charity. We developed a relationship, and I'm thankful for that. He's such a good dude. And I think people tend to think about money and the business before the actual relationship that will result in a business at some point. We just have to be patient. Again, it's not an overnight success. I'm really patient. I could use my resources a lot better with terms of making money, but I choose to wait until they make the offer first. But that's just how I'm wired.
So Steve, that's just hitting on another point there. So that's right on the money. I think that's spot on, really good guidance. And then you just mentioned you have a charity. So as a fellow nonprofit co-founder and being involved in that, can you just tell us quickly, what is your charity?
Yeah. So it's called SMASH for Troops. So I'm a 501c3. I've wanted to do it for a long time, but I've never had the resources or the time to do it. So I literally just got the approval from the Secretary of State in February. A friend of mine, his name was, let me backtrack. So every single event that I have, I also attach myself to a charity. So for example, my third show, because we did Freddie Roach, we also raised money from Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's Foundation. I've done shows where I did, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we did Susan G. Komen. So it's like every single show, I'm constantly raising money for different charities. I should have my own. And coincidentally, my friend Lance Groth, he had his own nonprofit called The Collective Access that I helped out with, where they teach networking to kids. Such a cool concept, and I loved it.
Wow.
And you got so many people involved. This was in San Diego. Fast forward in December, I was telling him how, I'm going to apply for my 501. He goes, wait a minute, are you serious? I said, yeah. And he said, I actually am going to dissolve my 501 because I don't have the time or the resources anymore, because he had just started his 1031 exchange company. So I said, well, can I take it over and just file for a name change? So that's what we did. So the Collective Access is now SMASH for Troops. The SOS approved it, and I'm good to go.
Well, Steve, congratulations. And I see that on your website is probably the best way to get access to SMASH for Troops. For folks that want to learn more and potentially make a donation and get involved, that's the best route, right? Go into smashglobal.com /charity/SMASH for Troops.
Correct.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you for sharing that piece, because that's we always admire folks that we can talk to that are all, titans or leaders, experts at their craft, but also are giving back in different ways. So when you mentioned it, I wanted to jump on that and learn a little bit more. So then going back to what we were talking about, back to the world of MMA, looking forward, where do you see the future of MMA? So you're clearly stealing some market share. MMA is stealing market share for boxing. How do you see it stacking up to other sports, both retrospectively here in the U.S. and maybe globally? And what are you thinking about doing in terms of helping the brand and the sport continue to innovate and maybe changing some of the formats, the tournament styles? Any idea around the future of MMA, and how do you ultimately see yourself plugging into that?
Yeah, so MMA is in a very hot area right now, obviously. Fastest growing sport in the world. Definitely taking over boxing, not because it's a better sport, it's just more electric. The younger generation wants more, boxing is very old school, 12-ounce gloves, only punches. So just the evolution of fighting. A cage is obviously a lot sexier platform than a ring as well. So yeah.
You remember the WWF steel cage matches?
I do.
Back
yeah.
in the day?
I think that drew so much more branding than just the ring. It's just the cage door closes, no one can get out. It's just something about it is very intimidating, and people are fascinated with things that scare them. But yeah, so MMA again, fast growing sport. It's not going to slow down, and I said it's in a hot spot right now because the UFC is going through these antitrust issues. There's something called the Ali Act. So Don King is the one who made this all happen. Back in the day, he was acting as promoter and manager. So he was double dipping per se. The UFC has such a stronghold on MMA, it's kind of becoming a monopoly where they get to pick who fights. Oh, because the number 6 guy is the hottest one, we're going to let him fight for the belt. Whereas it doesn't work like that in boxing. If you're number 1, you're number 2. It doesn't matter if you're the number 1 guy at Top Rank and you're the number 2 guy at Golden Boy Promotions, you have to fight each other to be a world champion. Right now, it's not doing that because UFC is having a stronghold on the industry. Whereas when the Ali Act does pass, that means to be a champion, you're going to have to fight guys from the other promotions. So now, if you're the number 1 guy and you fight in the UFC, and the number 2 ranked guy is in Bellator, they're going to have to fight each other for a world championship. Right now, the UFC controls who are the world champions, which I don't want to say, I don't know what the word is. It's not right.
Yeah, and Steve, like going off of that, do you think they should sort of change the format completely? I mean, there's talks about a tournament style, there's talks about a season and a postseason type thing like other sports have. Do you think that should be instituted as a whole?
I don't. It's just hard because there's so many injuries in the sport.
Yeah.
Every time you have a tournament, there's going to be a guy that gets hurt, a couple guys that get hurt within that bracket every single time. And then what? Then you got to have a guy who just comes in and fills in as a replacement and gets the opportunity who doesn't deserve it. So it's difficult to do. I love the idea because it adds an element to it. But I've watched Bellator do it. The PFL does it. And I'm not really a fan. But then again, I'm not really a big fan of the other leagues either. So I'm like, if the UFC did it, it probably would be pretty crazy if you had like the top 12 guys, and like you, like I'm a wrestler. My life was based on our lives are based on brackets, so I love that. But the difference is a bracket is cool when it happens in 1 or 2 days.
I know if you were to spread it out over weeks or whatnot, it just takes a little appeal out, right?
It takes the appeal out, it takes the energy out. It's just not as exciting. And again, with MMA, you can't have like guys fighting 4 times in a day. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's not practical for sure.
You could possibly do like 4-man brackets, like 4-man tournaments in a night, but you're still taking the chance of somebody getting hurt, and it's probably going to happen.
And you have so many elements to draw somebody to your events. From, like you said, people are dressed nicely. You're feeding them. They have entertainment, celebrities there. They're doing a noble cause in terms of philanthropy. But in terms of being able to host the actual fighters, that's not an easy process. And to draw big names when there's other events they could be at all over the world, essentially, how do you draw these big names to come? And there's different compensation methods from boxing to MMA. For instance, MMA likes to spread it around to all their fighters, whereas boxing, most of the money is at the top, so to speak, right? Mayweather, all
the money is at the top. Even like in the UFC, people don't realize these guys don't get paid that much money. When you get signed to the UFC, your starting salary per fight is probably $10,000 to show and $10,000 to win. That's not a whole lot of money when you have a whole fight camp.
No, of course. So, in terms of your compensation structure for the athletes, can you shed a little light on there, how you're able to draw such big fighters?
Yeah. So for me, I go after the best unsigned fighters that I can get that I know will make it to the UFC, or I truly feel will make it to the UFC, which is, it's not difficult because you never know. It's a very hard process. But if I can get some of my guys into the UFC, then I can use the branding of the UFC on my own platform, which gives me so much value. So it's, my last show. So let me think. 9 shows. My 8th and 9th show, I started crowning my own champions. I'm like, okay, it's time to focus more on the fighters and not the celebrities. So let me start crowning my own world champions, which I did. Since I had 2 of my guys have got signed to the UFC, my 45er, and recently my 170 pounder. So now I can use their content on my platform. Oh yeah, Daniel Rodriguez, he just got signed to the UFC. Boom, done. So it gives me more clout for the future. In a perfect world, what I would love to do, I would love to take it up a notch. And the only way you can fight for Smash Global is if you're undefeated, because everybody knows what undefeated means. People come to my show, they can't even name. They can't name 3 UFC champions for the most part, and most people can't anyway. Really market names that people don't know, but you can market undefeated all day long. Everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, to close out, kind of, there's such big names in UFC right now. Obviously, Conor McGregor probably being the biggest one or whatnot. What do you think makes him so entertaining as a fighter? And there are probably, better fighters with better records throughout the history of UFC. There's tons of them. But what makes him so appealing?
Man, I don't like Conor as a human per se.
Yeah.
But he's an incredible fighter. For example, and I'll just give my own. I mean, you wrestled, so you kind of know too. But when I fought, dude, I was scared out of my mind every single time. Like walking into the cage.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So for Conor, what makes him so special is, and I don't know what goes on in his head in the back, but he seems like it looks like he sees everything in slow motion, which means he is so composed that his mindset is on a whole nother level. Like when I get in the cage and fought, I don't even remember what happened during the fight when it's over. Like you're just going muscle memory. It's chaos. Something like Conor McGregor, like he's so composed that he like sees everything and bang hits you with that left. And that's a special thing. And to do that in a sport where, dude, there are so many ways to lose is crazy. And that's why a lot of guys don't do a lot of shit talking. A lot of guys don't put themselves out there because everybody's going to lose in MMA. You can't stay undefeated. It's impossible. Unless you're Khabib, but eventually he's going to lose too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's very charismatic. There's just some guys just have that X factor. They're just born with it. You have no idea why they have it, but they just do.
So Steve, speaking of X factors too, you're known as the Hulk Smash, right? Where did the origin of the Hulk Smash? Because it's powerful. It gives an image, right? You see different things when you hear Steve Hulk Smash Orosco come into the ring. Where did it come from? Where was it derived from? I love it.
Yeah. Hey, this is wrestling 101 right here. So nicknames are earned. They're not usually given. And nicknames are earned. You don't give them yourself, self-proclaimed. When I moved to San Diego and I wanted to be a fighter, I started doing jiu-jitsu, obviously. And I was the wrestler going against all these guys that are jiu-jitsu guys. I always took everybody down. I always was on top. Obviously, my submission game wasn't great yet, but I was always on top. And everyone would always say, Steve is always Hulk smashing everybody. Because I would always just get on top and just lay my pressure. Because I'll tell you what, wrestling, the hips of a wrestler and the awareness of your hips is second to none. And jiu-jitsu guys have a hard time with wrestlers because of that.
For sure. And, closing out, Steve, can you tell us post-COVID-19, this whole coronavirus stuff, and you said that California is going to be shut down, the entertainment world, for a while. Do you have any kind of news or updates in terms of when your next event is going to be so people can, follow you and if they have interest, if they're in the LA area or want to come out?
So no later than September. I would like to have one as soon as the ban is lifted. So we have no idea when that's going to be. So let's say in the middle of May, they say, okay, we're going to open up the doors in July. I would like to boom, let's just do it in July. Because if you're going to take advantage of people being indoors, it's best to be ready when these doors open back up, because people are going to be starving and itching for sports and entertainment. You know, like for example, you guys probably saw this. I guess Dana White is having the UFC. Was it
on an island, right?
On an island,
yeah.
Which is crazy, but he's being so smart. He's going to make so much money. I wish Conor McGregor just jumped on that card, because that card is literally going to break every pay-per-view number. Because if you figure every one of the 17,000 people who would have went to MGM Grand to watch it are now just going to buy it on pay-per-view. There's going to be no UFC viewing parties, so every individual household is going to buy it. So the numbers are going to be crazy, and he's doing the right thing regardless. I'm happy he's doing it, even though it's not kosher, but I'm happy about it.
Hey, Steve, just knowing you a bit and then hearing you in the show, I think an island is very much in your future.
I'll take it.
We really thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us. For the audience to follow you outside of smashglobal.com, any other places you can look for? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube that you want to recommend and share?
Yeah, definitely both of my IG handles. So at Smash Global and at Steve Orosco, or on Instagram you can also search Mr. Smash and my name would pop up too.
Sounds great. That's awesome.
Thanks so much. Hey, we really appreciate having you on here, Steve. You know, it's been a blast and wildly entertaining, man. So thanks a lot, and thanks for tuning in to Made for the Moment, guys.
Yes.
Yep. Time to go get our custom tuxes made for the next event, Jaret. Thanks again.
Yeah, you got it, man. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for tuning in to Made for the Moment, featuring Jason Dodier and Jaret Grossman. Until next time.